Welcome to the Steady On Stronger Together podcast. I am your host, Angie Bauman. Today's episode is a remarkable lineup of women who are passionate about the issue of comparison. Char-Lee Cassel and Erin L. Todd are the voices of the Intuitive Eating for Christian Women podcast, and they joined me to talk with Heather Creekmore about the danger of comparison that she writes about in her book, The Burden of Better. Together, these women talked openly about the pain they have carried because of comparing and how they are daily learning to take their eyes off of themselves and other people and instead lock them firmly on Jesus. If it happens to feel like you're striving for something you can never quite attain, I think you'll be encouraged by the discussion. Let's listen in. We are here to visit with Heather Creekmore and to talk about her book, The Burden of Better. Yay! I'm Angie Bauman, and I'm joined tonight by two powerhouse co-hosts. Erin Todd is a writer, an intuitive eater, and kind of a longtime Steady On friend now. And so welcome back, Erin. And her website is gingerinprogress.com. I will be putting all of this in the comments and in the show notes so that you guys can follow these ladies too. And Char-Lee Cassel is a registered dietitian and exercise physiologist, and she's at charleecassel.com. You guys will correct me if I get any of this wrong, right? And together, Erin and Char-Lee are the voices of the Intuitive Eating for Christian Women podcast. Talk a lot about comparison and body image and kind of their journeys, I think, of breaking free from that idea of what we should look like and embrace the way that we're created, which is a lot what we're going to talk about tonight with Heather. Heather, as I said, is the author of two books. This is your second book. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, The Burden of Better. And Heather's a wife, a mom of four, an author, a blogger, a podcaster, hashtag all the things, right? And Heather talks openly about her struggles with body image and comparison. And this book, The Burden of Better, the subtitle is How a Comparison-Free Life Leads to Joy, Rest, and Peace. And her website is comparedtowho.me. Ladies, it is so great to have you all here. Thank you so much for lending some time tonight to have this, I think, really important discussion. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. I think we're all excited.
Definitely great to be here.
So this is the Steady On community, and my desire, I keep trying to zero in on really what I want this community to hear regularly, right? And I think one of the things one of the things I really want is for us as a group to be able to recognize the brokenness behind our behavior and allow God's grace to move us forward in places that we might feel spiritually stuck or defeated. That's kind of been my story in a variety of ways, right? Like I felt like this is just the way I was, or the issue that I was going to deal with or whatever. And the Lord over and over has kind of come into my life and said, you know what, I'd like something better for you. Mm-hmm. I'd like you to live in more freedom, and let me help you understand what that looks like. And so kind of given that lens, if you will, this idea that we can get stuck in these places, I'm going to put this to Heather first. If we consider the issue of comparison kind of through that lens, if you will, why do you think that it's something that Christian women need to talk about? Why is comparison what I would call really a universal issue with us? Would you agree? And if so, why do we need to talk about it, you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're hard pressed to meet a woman who is completely free from comparing herself to others in any way you can imagine, right? I mean, there's endless ways we can compare insides, outsides, homes, children, marriages, lack of marriages, you name it, right? We compare in all these different ways. But I feel like, and this is a topic I broach in my book, I feel like that term comparison in and of itself may be a hindrance for us as Christian women because it gives us something to hide behind. Comparison is a nice, cute little term. We have some memes that go with it. Comparison is the thief of joy. Oh my. Don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlights reel. Oh my. And then we keep scrolling and we keep comparing. And as Christian women, I think it's really important that we use biblical words for biblical problems.
Okay.
And comparison is an issue that's spoken to throughout the Bible. But if we just keep calling it comparison, you put that into your into your concordance, you may not find it.
Well,
But
we call it a game, even, do we not? Isn't that like the
right,
comparison game, right?
right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Again,
Mhm.
it's well, it's it doesn't really hurt me that bad,
Mhm. And
right?
we all do it. So,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Mhm.
And to what you said initially, Angie, so spot on, right? There's these problems we have. And in my first book, Compared to Who, I talked about them as normal girl problems, which is what I thought my body image issues were,
Okay.
right? Every woman I knew struggled with body image. And so it was just a normal girl problem. And as I looked for solutions, I mean, there wasn't one aside from what the culture was telling me. I needed to lose weight and, get great abs and get the hair and get the body and all the things.
Right.
And then I would be free. Although anyone who's tried that knows that actually doesn't work, right? So if we keep categorizing comparison as just a normal girl problem, it's kind of hopeless, right? Like we can quote the pithy memes and then you're kind of like, ugh, but I'm still stuck. I'm still comparing. I'm still discontent. I'm still frustrated. I still want a better life. And I think that's why it's a problem.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of Beth Moore in her book, So Long Insecurity. I probably will mess this up, but yeah, you like that one too. She said something about, and I've thought about this for long, like I assume if I'm insecure about my body, let's say, or whatever, fill in the blank, right? And I think you have a good body, then I assume you're not insecure because you have the thing that I'm struggling with, right? But you, because if I have a good marriage and you're struggling in your marriage, you're going to assume I'm not insecure because I have the thing, or at least you think I do, right? Because who knows, but I seem to have the thing that you think. And I hear that in what you're saying right now is that we're all trading it around and thinking that it's normal when in reality, it's really pulling us down and keeping us from being all that we can be. I'm going to go to Erin first. I see you nodding. Anything that you want to add to that before we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Heather, when you were talking, it was coming through for me like, let's call it what it is. And I was thinking like, it's an identity crisis. It means I don't know who I am. And so I'm looking around to try and figure out who I am and where I fit in. And not only that, but like just the judgment that is inherent in comparison, like you're going, I'm better than that person, or that person is better than me. And that's like a false hierarchy that like, we don't need that. We don't need this ladder of status that is not in the Bible. Like we should all be, I mean, it should be equal, and we're not better than our brothers or sisters, and they're not better than us. So it's like just this complete misunderstanding of identity in Christ for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Char-Lee, anything else about that you want to add about why talk about comparison, something different?
Yeah, well, I think what Heather was saying, I remember reading your first book, Compared to Who, and you dropped the idolatry word, and I was like, oh, she went there. And like I was thinking about working with clients and like, oh gosh, like, oh, to say that to someone, like how that feels. And I started processing it and really realizing, at one point in my life, the form my comparison took was massively body image and stuff like that. But then I realized this is really like idolizing this ideal life I have in my head that includes this marriage and this house and these kids and this body and, all of these things. And I'm saying that is what will be enough for me, not God. Or I'm saying, the way you created me, God, isn't quite enough, isn't quite good enough.
Yeah.
Well,
and I think anybody speak to this, because if we, like, all of us probably can identify with the body image struggles. And like, let's say we work really hard and get to a place that we want to be, all right, like physically, then don't we find that the comparison manifests itself in something else? Because really the issue isn't our body, right? It's really I don't know, Heather, what would you say?
It's really the idol. I mean, it's what Char-Lee just said, right? It's because what happens is that an idol never lets you be satisfied, right? That's one of the big distinctions between idols and Jesus. Jesus says, come to me and I will give you rest. Idols say, just a little bit further. You are, oh, that was so great. You lost that weight. Just go a little bit further and then you'll feel good about yourself. Idols keep us stuck chasing them. So we're too distracted to do what we're supposed to do in chasing Jesus. And so, yes, when it comes to comparison, it's identity, but it's also idolatry. It's and to the Beth Moore quote, right? I think underneath the surface there is, if I look at your marriage and compare my marriage to your marriage, what I'm really saying is I have this idol that's telling me a perfect marriage is what will satisfy me more than anything. And although a perfect marriage, although I don't think that exists, but a great marriage is a great thing, right? That's a healthy thing. Like, we should all strive to have holy marriages that are thriving, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, God doesn't want us to be satisfied there. He wants us to be satisfied in him.
Yeah.
And so idolatry is it just reveals our hearts that were created to worship Jesus. But all of these things, all these areas, and I would say, to your point earlier, the area in which we're most tempted to compare ourselves is normally the area of our lives in which we struggle the most with idolatry. That idealism, I think ideals are kind of a different form of the word idols, right? Our ideals are often our idols. I talk about that in chapter 5 of the book. And so all these ideals we have for ourselves, they're all these like little idols that are just whispering real gently, real sweetly sometimes to us, you'll be happy if you could just get a Joanna Gaines house. Oh, can you imagine how happy you will be?
If I just had the shiplap.
Right. But that's only good for what? Until
shiplap's not cool.
Is it out already? I mean, it's probably on its way. It's been a long time. I know that gray is out and like brown is coming back, which I'm really happy about because I have a brown house. So I'm just waiting. My turn is coming. But yeah, I mean, it's impossible to keep our idols happy. And so, whenever we get stuck in misplaced worship, it always leads to a place where we have to keep striving. We have to keep trying to find better, and we never find rest.
I'm going to take a little risk here because I think, Heather, it was on your Instagram, but I'm not 100% positive. So if it wasn't, forgive me. But did you just recently post something about the relationship between anxiety and worshiping idols? Will you talk about that for just a second?
Yeah, it was a Tim
Good. I'm glad
quote.
It was you.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember exactly how it went.
It's talking about when you feel anxiety, it's really pointing us to the idol, right?
Yeah,
Shirley, did you see that? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it reveals an idol that's toppling. Oh, go ahead.
What did she say? Go ahead.
No, Heather, please speak into it, but like personal experience massively.
That you can relate, Char-Lee, idols to anxiety. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody can speak into that. I just, when you were talking, Heather, that quote came back to me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the quote was, when we feel anxiety rise up, and I'm not doing Tim Keller justice, but that's when our idols start to topple. Okay. But I don't think the word topple was in a like positive, like that's when our idols are being dethroned kind of way. I think what he meant was that's when our idols get shaky.
Yes.
Right. Like we have that thing. And so let's just go to body image, because that's where we've all lived, right? So you feel like maybe you've lost the weight, right? And you feel like, okay, I'm doing good. I feel good because I lost that weight, and that's what my idol told me. As soon as I lost the weight, then I would be happy, right? But you go out and maybe you don't get the compliments you expected. Maybe no one notices, right? Or maybe those jeans that you thought were going to fit now that you lost the weight, maybe they are a little tight, and you feel that anxious feeling in your stomach rise up. And then I need to do more. What else can I do? I'm not good enough yet. And that's the anxiety we start to feel, right? And that's that idol, like, oh, you thought I was solidly in place, but you're not there yet, honey. And that's that idol toppling. So yeah, I think there's a huge connection there. I don't know, Char-Lee, if that's.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, we can like social media, right? This was I recognize, like, why do I feel so anxious after scrolling through social media? And this was after, like, I've really worked through the body image thing. I like pretty good there. Like, I don't feel like I'm necessarily comparing myself to other people. Like, what's going on here? And I might not be looking at a friend and comparing myself to their lives, but what I was seeing was perfectly curated ads about biblical parenting and being a dietitian and all these things that are important to me, that I would look at it and go, oh my gosh, maybe I need that to be a better mom. Maybe I should be doing that program. Maybe I should be doing this continuing education. Maybe I should be doing this to grow my business. And massive anxiety that like, let's go to therapy and let's like work through these things.
Right.
But that really was coming from this place of, maybe I need all these things to have this better life, to be better, to be worthy.
Yeah.
Right.
I do think there's a sense in which we have to just like own this truth that so much money is being made in our culture by encouraging us to be dissatisfied. Right. And so I think that's really, that's part of where we live, and we have to be smart about that, I think, and recognize that. I'm the same way, Char-Lee, where sometimes, because my news feed is all filled with like Christian communication stuff, right? And it seems like everybody's doing something that I'm not doing, and I'm sure supposed to be doing it, and then every once I'm like, I've got to put this down, because all of a sudden, well, I had a good day, but I forgot that I did, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we know, like, you write on comparing a variety of things like homes and parenting and body size. So what's the difference between deciding, I think I'm going to get a new couch because I want one, right? And it's going to look good in here, and crossing the line, or I want my kids to be well behaved, and so I'm going to try to raise them right because that's good. What's the difference between that and then crossing the line kind of and looking in something to affirm us or satisfy us when only really God can do that? Can you kind of speak about the difference there?
Sure. Well, I say the first litmus test, and what I was implying earlier when I said we need to give biblical words to comparison, is we need to start talking about it as covetousness, envy, and jealousy. And I think a lot of times most Christian women don't know what those words mean. Very uncomfortable words. Right. But and most of us don't know what they mean. Like, oh, should I say envy or should I say jealousy? What in the world is covetousness? That just sounds like it's something from the Old Testament that they did in Leviticus or something. And I don't know about that. I skipped those chapters.
Doesn't apply now, right? Yeah.
Right. But so just to give us some terms. So covetousness is really more about possessions. Right? Although sometimes I believe we can be covetous in the way we look at other women in the body image arena, right? Like, I can want your abs and not necessarily be thinking anything about you. Really, I'm objectifying you and saying that your body parts are just that. They're just parts. They're not really part of you. And so I'm able to be covetousness in that arena. Envy is really more when she has what I want, and I kind of hate that, and this, I feel like I see this in Christian circles way too much, where we say comments like, oh, your metabolism's so fast, like we can't be friends, or, things like that. They're just snide little comments that we've let go, but that really divide us because they're envious statements, right? And then jealousy is when you're actually entitled to something and you feel like it's slipping away. And so jealousy, God is a jealous God, right? Because he's entitled to our worship. And sometimes we don't give it to him. And so jealousy, is more like, I feel like my husband's talking to that other woman. I'm jealous because really I'm entitled to all of my husband's attention. And so those are the three kind of the sin litmus test, right? But when you're talking about a new couch, there's a good chance you're not getting a new couch because you're covetous of your neighbor's couch. Maybe you are, right? Maybe you search for couch one time and all of your Facebook ads and all your Instagram ads are going to be couches, right? So maybe it is a covetous problem, but maybe it's just if my couches are 20 years old, just to be real, we need a new couch desperately. Okay. So it's not necessarily an evil thing to upgrade, right? But then I think the other test that's really helpful is the test that Jesus puts in Matthew 6, where he talks about the treasure principle, right? Where your treasure is, your heart will be also. So where's your treasure? Where are your thoughts? So in the body image arena, this is kind of, I guess it could apply to a couch too. We've probably all been there where you kind of get fixated on something like, I need this thing, right? And so if a lot of your thought life is going to this thing, maybe let's say you can't afford the couch, right? Let's say there's actually a priority that should be taken care of, a bill or something else, but you are so obsessed with this couch that you're like, I don't care. I am buying this couch regardless. Then I would say that that's a problem. And then this couch for better, for worse, well, for worse, really, has become your treasure, right? And so that's when you need to stop and say, okay, wait, what am I treasuring? And who am I honoring in this, right? Like not every decision we make is it super clear that I'm honoring God in this, but I think that should always be our intention, right? Like the word tells us to honor God with what we eat and drink. Right? Like in Deuteronomy, we're told to, worship God when we lay down and rise up and come in and go out. Like God is supposed to be the one that's always on our minds, always on our thoughts. We're supposed to be constantly worshiping him. And so if our thoughts are distracted by how can I get a new couch? What's it going to take to get a new couch? Or even something good, like how can I get my children's behavior to improve? How many books, can I buy to get my children? I'm spending all of my time listening to podcasts on improving my children's behavior. Like we can become obsessed even over good things and to a certain extent make an idol out of them, worshiping the behavior of our children, believing that if the behavior of our children would just improve, then our lives would be so much better, right? Until we come across the next thing, right?
Yeah, I think that's the key, because if we're fixated on the thing, right, then it's not really the thing. Is that fair? Like if we're so fixated on the couch that we're willing to compromise our integrity, maybe even to not pay a bill so that we can have the couch, then is it really about the couch, or is it something that we think the couch will do in our lives? Isn't that, I think that's the key thing right there. Erin, do you have like healthy comparison? I know you've struggled a lot with your eating and your body image and all that. It's good to take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But how do you watch yourself so you don't fall into a place that is actually an unhealthy place of that?
Constant vigilance.
I appreciate your honesty.
You can't fall asleep on that one. And you always have to be able to ask yourself and honestly answer, like, what is the motivation here? Like for the couch example, and you have to peel the layers on that and really get to what it's actually about. It's like, am I getting this couch because then my living room is going to be tied together? And then once my living room's tied together, then I can invite people over and be a hostess. And then I'll be serving people, or then those people will like me. And then I will have value as a person. So it's like, if you can't really unpack your thought and your motivation, it's a hard issue. An idol is going to be a hard issue every time. So I think it takes a lot of mindfulness and awareness and honest self reflection or examination on a daily basis to stay on top of that stuff. Because as soon as, you buy the couch or don't, the next thing will come in.
It's the next thing. Yeah. Right. I think that's really important. And it's really hard for us to do, is it not? Ask the hard questions, spend the time with ourselves and with the Lord to say, search me, examine me, reveal to me the reasons behind what I'm doing here and the places that I'm trying to fill myself or satisfy myself with something other than you. Yeah. That's hard, but that's good stuff, ladies. I appreciate your honesty. Char-Lee, anything else that you want to add to that?
Well, I when Heather talked about, who are we honoring? That's been a question that really helps me in big choices and small choices. Erin and I have conversations. Are we going to continue with the podcast? Are we going to keep doing this? And that's really the question for me now. Who am I honoring? Why do I want to do this? When I started, I really recognized like, oh, I'm doing this to glorify myself. Like this is about me. And through time, I've worked and recognized now it's not about me and it's more about honoring God, and it changes everything. Now we're in this place of surrender, and Erin and I always talk about our intuitive podcasting now. We're not striving after getting followers and getting people to like us. And we're just showing up and doing what we think God's calling us to do. And it's from a place of rest and it feels good. Something for me that is just is that anxiety piece. If I start feeling anxiety about something, that's what sends me down that question. Yeah. Where's my heart? What's this about?
Yeah. And recognizing what anxiety is in us. That took me a long time, because I don't experience anxiety the way that I thought anxiety was. Does that make sense? Right? Like the way that and I'm not saying like I'm special or unique. I just didn't, when I hear people talk about anxiety, I thought that I didn't do that. And when I had to get honest with myself and recognize what does that feel like in you? And now I'm like, oh, I feel that all the time. And so, and to allow that feeling, as you're saying, Char-Lee, allow that feeling to then, I try to pause and be like, what is going on here right now that's creating that, Heather, I wonder if you could speak to, because this is something that I deal with a lot as we're trying to be obedient and write or podcast or I know that you're doing those things too, along with Erin and Char-Lee. How do you keep yourself from comparing how many books you've sold versus someone else? You know what? Can I say this real quick? I thought one of the most beautiful things I've seen in a long time is what you and Shannon Popkin did together
Yes.
recently. Yes. Okay. Yes. So for our listeners that don't know, Shannon Popkin is another Christian author who has written a book this past spring. I was on her launch team actually on the Comparison Girl, right? And I know that you guys kind of found each other. And I think that probably could have stirred a lot of, hey, we've both written books on the same topic. And yet what you did was sit down and have a conversation and shared your heart. Anyway, would you just speak to that for a second? Yeah. Like, how do you keep that green-eyed thing down,
Well, yeah, I'll be honest. No, I ordered Shannon's book because I was doing continuing research on what other Christian books there were on comparison, as mine was put on Amazon. And I was like, I've never seen this book before. What's this book? Who's this person? I don't know this person. Ordered it immediately so I could read it and decide why my book was better, right? Because that's what our hearts do.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. That's the truth. Yep. And I read it and I was like, oh, this is a really good book. We're on the same team. And and God's done that for me a couple of times where he's been like, okay, Heather, just back it off. Yeah. And so I reached out and I was like, hey, I want to have you on my podcast to talk about your comparison book. It's a couple months before my comparison book comes out, but you have a good comparison book. And people that read comparison books don't only read one book. Yeah. They read all the books. Yeah. And so there is no sense, and I talk about this in Burden of Better too, so I really was forced to practice what I preach. But there's no sense in having the scarcity mentality, right? Like that is so huge. So if you're not familiar with that term, it's a term from Stephen Covey's book way back in the day, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? So it's been around for a little while, but scarcity mentality just essentially means that you're afraid that there's a limited number of spaces, slots, positions, jobs, whatever category you want to put on that. But there's just a limited number of positions. And if you don't have one of those positions, then you don't have any role to do in that realm. And so for me as an author, it would be saying, well, there's Shannon's already taken this spot as a author who's written about comparison. Like, I guess there's no other comparison books needed. And that's not who our God is, right? God has an abundance mentality, right? He owns the whole world. and so if he's given us gifts to use, how ridiculous would it be if he gifted you to be a singer? I am not gifted in that way, but if he gifted you to be a singer and you turned on your radio and you're like, oh, wow, that Carrie Underwood, she's a good singer. I guess I should never sing. That would be ridiculous, right? Because we would only have one singer. Everyone had that thought, right? We can, so at some level, we can recognize this in reality. We can see that there's different types of gifts, like even within the singing realm, right? There's different types of voices, different tones, different styles, right? But this applies to everything. Even to beauty and body image, right? A lot of us who struggle with body image issues have believed falsely that there's only one kind of beautiful. We wouldn't actually admit that to anyone, but we've kind of just decided for ourselves there's one kind of beautiful that we should be. And it keeps us stuck, right? Because we can't see what everyone else sees for ourselves, and everyone else sees, oh, well, she's beautiful, but she's tall and thin, and she's beautiful, and she's shorter, and an athletic build, and all the different variety. I think there's just so much beauty in that. And God created the world that way, right? And he's gifted us for a reason to use those gifts. And if we compare ourselves into not using them, it's just disobedience.
I think it's so interesting with women. This is true with some of my friends, especially in younger years, that often the thing that makes us unique and is uniquely beautiful about us is often the things that drives the insecurity, is it not? Because it is unique. Like what you're saying about there's the one way of beautiful. And yet we're uniquely beautiful. And yet often it's that thing that kind of either that stands out and kind of is our superpower that we try to keep down almost, if you will, whether it's on the outside or the inside, the thing that we actually do really well. So I want to talk to you guys about grace, because one of the things that Heather writes about is that I believe I have this right, that you really say that you believe that the way out of comparison is having a better understanding around grace. What does that mean to you? And I'd like Erin and Char-Lee to weigh in on this also after Heather does, but talk to me about that.
Sure. Well, so we hear a lot in our culture, and just even aside from Christian culture, we hear that we need to be grateful, right? Have gratitude. If you can just be thankful for what you have, then maybe you won't compare, and you'll just feel better. You'll feel more joy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of studies about that, right? But I think as Christians, it doesn't work fully, right? Actually, I don't know that it works fully for anyone until you recognize God's role in all of that. So until you have a really deep, thorough understanding of God's grace and all the different ways that it's at work in our lives, not just salvation for later, not just God's saving grace that gets us the ticket to heaven, right? But God's grace is operating in our lives every single day. He's growing us. He's sanctifying us. He's helping us persevere through suffering. There are so many different ways that God sheds his grace on us every single day. And if we can then be grateful, have a heart of gratitude out of a deeper understanding of God's grace, that's where the freedom from comparison really comes, right? Because if you're just saying, it's a self-esteem gimmick is what I like to categorize it as, right? So like we can just be thankful, like, oh, I'm so thankful I'm awesome. I'm so thankful that God made me like this. And, we can throw some God words in there, right? But if the focus is on me, and I'm thankful for me, and I'm thankful for how great I am at this, and I'm thankful for how cool I am, and how, me. At the end of the day, it's not enough. It's not meaty enough. It's shallow, right? It doesn't ultimately satisfy. But when we have a better understanding of grace, that's when that shifts our eyes up off of me onto God. Wow, I am amazed at how the God of the universe can know what's going on in my life, in my heart, and what's going on in everyone else's hearts and minds around the globe, and how he can intervene in my situations, and how he can hear my prayers, and how he can walk with me through tough roads, right? Like that is overwhelmingly so much more awesome and amazing than me, right? And then if you tag gratitude onto that, if we're truly grateful for what God has done, that's where the freedom comes.
Well, and it doesn't change, because what we're cool at or what we're good at or whatever, that's like, that shakes, that changes, that can be taken away or whatever. But he is incorruptible. He is constant. And so that goes to a place of just it's as we mature as Christians, right? We need to be placing our faith in that which is heaven focused and incorruptible. Yeah, that's good. Either one of you, Erin, Char-Lee, grace. How does grace play into this for you? I know I should have called on you, because then Erin first, then Char-Lee. How about that? That's better, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said, Heather. I think the way out is taking your eyes off yourself, and how else can you do that unless you have something more compelling to look at? So
unless you have something more compelling to look at, that's good.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Char-Lee.
I think that you all layered it in perfectly, that, gratitude for me feels good. There's some good stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end of the day, it's so shallow, because if you're just grateful for you and the things you have in your life and you're so great, then the fear starts creeping in of what if I lose these things? Then the striving creeps in of I have to keep this up. I have to do better. Like, I'm grateful for these things because these things make my worth and my value. And now I have to be terrified of losing them. But when you're looking to God and you're looking to his grace, you can be grateful for the things he's doing in your life. You can be grateful for the things that you have in your life. And in the same breath, you can surrender them, and you can say, I will still be good even if those things are gone.
Yes.
Because you are good.
Because you are good and you are in me, and that does not change. Yeah.
You are with me and you will never change. it takes life from being so dependent upon our circumstances here and puts it more on this constant everlasting. And that doesn't mean that you don't want to have a good life here. That doesn't mean that you don't want to improve your behavior or your kids' behavior or whatever those things are. You can still work on those things, but what it has massively done for me is, instead of me striving after those things and white knuckling to earn my worth and be exhausted, and I'm surrendering those things to God and saying, if you want those things for me, help me work on those, produce those in my life, and letting it go.
When I truly began to understand and believe that I am loved the way I am, completely loved the way I am, something very deep inside me shifted. I forget it all the time, right? I do.
Yes.
I forget, but I know it now, and I know how to get back to it. I know that I can remember that. I know that, and it changes. It just changed everything for me. And my hope as I grow as a Christian is that I forget it less, and I remember it faster when I forget it. Right? Like that's my goal. Yeah. This has been so wonderful and uplifting. And I want, before I let you guys go, because this is what I always do before I end, is I want to know if there's anything, I'm going to ask this of each of you, is there anything right now that you're studying, reading, watching, listening to, or not? Just what might be connecting you, keeping you connected with God right now? I just want to share those things out. Anybody? Heather, go first if you will.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I try to read through the Bible every year.
Oh, good.
And some years I am faster at it than other years, but I'm doing a Bible plan, the Nicky Gumbel Bible in a Year plan on the Bible app. And he does a masterful job of tying in, it's an Old Testament passage, a New Testament passage, and a Psalm or proverb, which is what a lot of Bible plans are. But he has this little devotional that somehow ties together Leviticus and Matthew and Proverbs, and it's impressive. But I really, at first I was like, oh, I don't want a devotional. I don't need more to read if I'm going to get through the whole Bible in a year. but it's been really, really great.
Good,
so I've
good.
really enjoyed that.
And it's okay if you don't get through it in the year.
Yeah,
it's okay.
I know. Well, the Bible app has that, like, I don't know, with the button where you can change all the dates. Yeah, I use
or
that.
Or they'll tell you if you broke your streak or whatever.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
I don't need this pressure.
No. I don't like that pressure.
Char-Lee, anything that you're doing right now that's keeping you connected to God?
So my connection with God has really changed over the last few months, like my system.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pregnant, and I've been
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've been so nauseous.
Oh, no.
Reading, I couldn't read, and I couldn't get up early, and I was struggle busing so hard. So Erin has been a massive help. We had planned to do this Bible study together, and I was like, I can't. So she's showing up for me in videos and reading. She's reading the footnotes to me and telling me all about it. So I've been listening to Erin in my ear every day about what she's studying in the Bible, which is so helpful. And then
that is a good friend. That's beautiful, girls. That's wonderful. Yeah, go ahead. I cut you off. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. And then I just recently downloaded the Abide app. And I
love the Abide app. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is the first like big purchase app. I'm not paying for apps, but I paid for the Abide app.
It's worth it, girl.
It's worth it.
So
it's worth it. Yeah.
I've been getting into that a little bit too. So.
Well, I so hope you start feeling better soon. My heart is so yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Erin, Erin, what do you we got to know what you're reading to Char-Lee now. What is it that you're reading to her?
We've been in Galatians, and it is the first 5 apps printed experience guide study. So that's put on by the Proverbs 31 Ministries ladies.
Yeah.
And so we're in that, but like she mentioned, we're in the footnotes for the Life Application Study Bible, which is like, I mean, it defeats the purpose when you underline everything, and we're just in there. And so studying Galatians, and then I'm also in the Laudate app, which is the daily Catholic Mass readings. So, Heather, I just had no idea the Old Testament Psalm and a New Testament thing was done by anybody else. Of course it is, but that's the format too. There's always an Old Testament reading, a Psalm where you do a response to it, and a New Testament reading. And then on Sundays, a gospel passage. So I've just been in that, but really Galatians has its hooks in me pretty good right now, and we're not moving off even though we're through with the study. I'm like, I'm not done with this.
Yeah, I taught an inductive study of Galatians a couple of years ago, and changed my life. Like, I mean, the whole legalism. We could dive into that with everything we've been talking about right now. So, if you girls like the life application footnotes, I don't know if you're familiar with the Enduring Word app or not. It's a commentary app that combines several different commentaries and stuff. Enduringword.com. I'm just going to tell you, you'll love it. So, but they have an app. And it's free, Char-Lee. The app is free. So you'll be fine.
We're getting that.
Enduring Words. So Heather, this book, I love it. There's all my little tabs for those who are watching. You can see that I loved it. I loved Shannon's too, but I will say this. I didn't circle back to this. I thought both you and Shannon, excellent books, very different perspectives in a lot of ways, very different books. And so I just encourage, if this is an issue for those who are listening now or later that you do know that you struggle with and you want to learn more about it, I highly recommend this one. I just really appreciate your honesty and your challenge. I think you're very brave in just saying we need to, like you said, call this what it is. So thank you very much for writing it. Thank you for joining us tonight. Erin, Char-Lee, thank you very much for joining us tonight. This has been awesome. And we're signing off, but until next time, peace. This conversation challenged me, but it's so helpful to talk about comparison and why we compare with women who are honest about the struggle. I believe Heather is absolutely right. The way out of this mess is recognizing and embracing the grace that God offers in abundance. Thank you so much for listening. I pray that wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.